Indeed, indeed. In the words of Dr. John Henry Clark, who was a Garveyite and probably the last famous Pan-African nationalist, who died, I believe, in 1997, 96, 97. He said that anyone in Africa who is not an African is an invader or a descendant of an invader. Anyone in Africa who is not an African is an invader or a descendant of invader. And I'm glad that BI brought this up because right now there's a lot of confusion over what an African is and who is an African. And this confusion is being put out there by Africans of the Islamic faith here in America and on the continent as a result of the United States' effort to destabilize the leader of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi. Now, you can be an anti-imperialist. You can be an anti-white supremacist. You can be anything that you want. You can have some sort of compassion for Gaddafi. You can speak up against the militaristic takeover of Libya. I have no problem with none of that. But that does not mean that you have the right to make Muammar Gaddafi an African. Muammar Gaddafi is an Arab. The Arabs took over North Africa by use of the sword after the death of Muhammad ibn Abdullah. And that's why North Africa is all Arab. Those people are not indigenous to Africa. They come from the desert. They came in and stole that, killed millions of Africans to take over North Africa. And now we have Africans of the Islamic faith who are trying to convince everybody else to treat Muammar Gaddafi as some kind of African leader. He is not. When Muammar Gaddafi took over Libya after his coup, he took down the red, black, and green flag of Libya, and he called the government the Libyan Arab Republic. Not the Libyan African Republic. He called it the Libyan Arab Republic. His fifth son, he named his fifth son Saif al-Arab, which means the sword of an Arab. So how in the hell can an African nationalist, a Pan-Africanist, name his son a name that means the sword of the Arab? It's because he is an Arab nationalist. And I'm sick and tired of these Muslims, here we go again, feeling like that they got to protect and preserve Arabism, going around trying to confuse black people and make them think that Muammar Gaddafi is one of our leaders. As the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey said, we must have our own leaders. We will not take the leaders of other races and other faiths. And to that end, I have to speak on what the black socialists are doing. The black socialists are treating Fidel Castro and Che Guevara like they African. They not Africans. Those were two white men. You can respect what they did. I don't have a problem with you respecting the fact that Castro overthrew capitalism, that Che Guevara fought white supremacy. I don't have a problem with that. But stop trying to make people African. I keep hearing Negroes say things that Che Guevara had a black grandmother, or Fidel Castro had a black great grandfather. So what? So did George Washington. So did Abraham Lincoln. So did Thomas Jefferson. That doesn't make them African. We have a bad habit in our race of trying to claim other people. We don't need to claim nobody else. We got enough heroes of our own. Treating Fidel Castro or Che Guevara or Muammar Gaddafi like a leader is no different than having a white picture of Jesus hanging up in your house. It is a foreign god. And all of our gods, all of our leaders, all of our heroes must be of African blood. So to reinforce what the Bobo was saying, anybody in Africa who is not an African is an invader or a descendant of one, and they need to get the hell out. And in order for Pan-Africanism and revolutionary Pan-Africanism, in order for it to totally be successful and take effect, we have to reclaim every inch of our motherland. That's right. Because many people, in fighting against neo-colonialism, are only looking at the European colonialism in sub-Saharan Africa. They are not looking at the Arab colonialism in northern Africa. I don't care how long the Arab has been in Libya, has been in Egypt, has been in Morocco, has been in Algeria. They do not own that land. That is African land. And as we kick out the Europeans, we must also kick out the Arabs. And any African, Muslim or not, who tries to stand in the way of African people reclaiming every inch of our motherland will be treated like the enemy because they are not identifying with us. They are identifying with our enemy, and anyone who identifies with our enemy is an enemy also.
Straight to the point. And on that note, I know you're familiar with Idi Amin and Robert Mugabe, who has been demonized by the white, Western media. What is your view on Idi Amin and Robert Mugabe as we speak of the expulsion?
Now, Idi Amin and Robert Mugabe did cooperate with Western imperialism at some point in their career. Yes, they did. There's no doubt about that. Of the two, though, I consider Idi Amin to be a little bit more revolutionary. Mm-hmm. He had much more courage than Robert Mugabe did. Although I appreciate the position that Robert Mugabe is taking today, we have to also admit that he's only taken that position once white supremacy threatened his leadership in Zimbabwe. Had they not threatened his leadership in Zimbabwe, he would not have become the people's champion that he is now. Mm-hmm. Now, I support what he's doing, and I give him respect, but I'm cautious with Mugabe. And the reason I'm cautious with Mugabe is because if Western imperialists decided to strike a deal with Robert Mugabe, that would allow them to continue to control and exert their influence in certain parts of Southern Africa, he might possibly cooperate again today like he did yesterday. Whenever you get an African leader who cooperates with white supremacy, you have to be careful when they become revolutionary because you don't know if they're becoming revolutionary for benevolent reasons. Sure. And a lot of us believe that Mugabe has a lot of personal political reasons for why he became a revolutionary all of a sudden, and at the same time having not fought white supremacy tooth and nail from day one. Remember, he was oppressing the people at one point, and then he became revolutionary the next moment once he found out what the United States and Britain had in store for him. So I'm supporting him. I like what he's doing. Okay, we're going to respect him as a leader, but we're also going to keep a very watchful eye over him because some of his behavior in the past makes it clear to us that he can be used by both sides. Now, Idi Amin, when he cut the relationship with Western imperialism, he cut it for good. Mm-hmm. And the reason I respect Idi Amin so much is because Idi Amin had the courage to do what most African leaders would never do. And that is honestly and openly criticize white supremacy. When he told black people in America that they could come back to Uganda and resettle there because Africa is their home, that was unprecedented. That was unprecedented. No other African leader so directly said, come on back here whenever you're ready, this is your home. Yeah. Also, when he expelled the Indians out of Uganda for sucking the economic blood of the country and made them get the hell out of that country, that's unprecedented. When he made the European dignitaries, when they would visit Uganda, he would make them get on their hands and knees and bow down and kiss his feet. That's unprecedented. You ain't never seen European dignitaries bow down to an African king, but you've seen African kings bow down to European dignitaries for the past 500 years. So for me, even though he made some mistakes in his early career, even though he cooperated with Western imperialism to some point, Idi Amin's example of what a strong black leader is supposed to be is one of the best examples we have had in the modern world of black manhood. Idi Amin was true African manhood, and nobody can take that from him. He unabashedly and unapologetically championed African history, African culture. He was a Pan-Africanist. In fact, he had plans to build a new African Union headquarters in Uganda. So, yes, without a doubt, I uphold the legacy of Idi Amin.
Is there any African head of state in Africa presently that you admire?
Here's a couple who I think are saying the right things. There's a couple who I think have some good minds on their shoulder, because most African heads of state are just as corrupt, crooked, and cowardly as the black leaders we have here.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no one who I can say is doing the work of Pan-Africanism. It's easy to do the talk of Pan-Africanism, but there's almost none of them who can do the work of Pan-Africanism. And one of the biggest reasons for that is because of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund of Washington, D.C., that control African economies, destroyed the infrastructure of the nation by imposing SAPs, Structural Adjustment Programs, SAP. And that's exactly what they do. They sap the political and economic strength of African nations, keeping them weak and docile, so that European racism and imperialism can continue to decimate and dominate those countries. The reason Africa is backwards is because it refuses to stop taking handouts from Washington, D.C. It refuses to stop taking Obama dollars. Africa has yet to learn the lesson of white philanthropy, just like black America and the Caribbean have yet to learn the lesson of white philanthropy. The more we give you, the more we control you. The more we give you, the worse off you are. The more we give you, the more enslaved you become to us. We still haven't gotten it through our thick head. It would be a whole lot better for Africa to decide to never take another dollar from the white man and go through 20, 30 years of hell to become independent than it would be to keep on living off his money. All you're doing is enslaving future generations of African leaders. They give you $1, they charge you 700 cents on the dollar, and you keep on borrowing, and you keep on borrowing. Most African nations are indebted to the Western world for the next 100 years. If that ain't neo-colonialism, what the hell is? And then you have Obama, who then came into Africa with AFFICOM, and he set up military bases all throughout the country. And he's doing that so when the African leaders realize that they are being recolonized and that the resources are being re-raped again under Obama, just as they was done 100 years ago, and they decide to stand up and stop giving the United States of America their resources, guess what's going to happen? Obama or whatever president is in office through the Congress and under the direction of the global financial European powers are going to do what? Embark upon military campaigns all throughout Africa, killing leaders, bombing the civilians, arresting revolutionaries so that they can steal our resources. The worst thing Africa could have done, and the worst thing Obama could have done, was bring U.S. military onto African soil. By doing that, they set us back another 200 years because who knows how long it's going to take for Pan-Africanists, true Pan-Africanists, to uproot the United States military out of Africa. That was when I think AFRICOM under Obama was the worst move made in the 21st century against Africa's best interests.